Hey Fred, they told me you were trying to get past the light-hearted humor and that you were trying to create some gut-busting laughter. Well, guess what? This is the video for you because I am going to share with you the tools and tactics I use to create memorable stories that keep kids laughing again and again and again. For those of you who are new here, my name is K.E. Lewis. I am children's author of the award-winning book, Never Take Your Rhino on a Plane. I have several years of experience writing for kids in classrooms, in museums, and in picture books. And the tools and tactics that I'm going to teach you in this video are an extension of the last video where I actually taught the foundations. And today we're going to do a deeper dive and talk about level 2 tactics of humor. The tools and tactics I teach in this video is applicable to everyone writing for children, whether you be in museums, in scripts, in classrooms, or like myself in books. These tools are applicable across the board. Now let's get to work. Before we get started, I just want to review a couple things. We need to remember that writing effective humor is a strategy. Stack your deck. If you only lean on one tool or only have one way of telling a joke, it's not humor at all. Second, let's recall the humor pyramid from last video, where humor is two parts. Remember, humor is part head and part heart, with level 1 being how we create the story, how we craft the characters, how we actually set up the jokes, how we build fundamentally our humor toolbox. And then we go to level 2. Level 2 appeals to the head. And we have to remember that great humor is a mixture of both level 1 and level 2. Today we're going to talk about level 2. Unlike level 1, level 2's tactics can kind of stand on their own. They have a little more weight than level 1 tactics, but you want to use and exercise the same principle in that the more you braid them and the more you stack your tools, the better the joke will be, the stronger it will become, and your joke becomes 2- and 3-fold. All right, so the first tool that we're going to talk about today is wordplay. Wordplay becomes the joke whenever we use playful twists, whenever we are talking about puns, double entendres, or using language to land the joke. So the thing about wordplay is that wordplay, it appeals to word lovers. And word lovers are your teachers, your parents, your librarians. One thing about wordplay, though, I would caution you to actually use it sparingly. Because remember, it's all strategy. So you want to make sure that you are not overusing wordplay and that it feels natural in a sentence. Because great writing should be like the Wizard of Oz. Once you see the man behind the curtain, the gig is up. So whenever you are writing, you want to bury the language like Easter eggs, where you find them, you're not quite looking for them, but you stumble across them and you're able to appreciate it more. Speaking of wordplay, why was 6 afraid of 7? Yep, because what? 7, 8, 9. This is one of the books I always consider when I come to wordplay because Tara Lazar does a great job. Her and Ross McDonald does a great job in this detective story about numbers, where we actually get to see wordplay on the page. Let's read the first couple pages, shall we? 7, 8, 9, The Untold Story. I was dozing in my chair when an urgent banging on my office door bolted me awake. It was 6. Something had scared the pants off him. 7 is coming to get me, said 6. As a private eye, I'm used to his type. Numbers. They're always stuck in a problem. But I knew about the 7 fellow. He was odd. Take it easy, 6, I said. What's 7 up to? Word on the street is that 7, 8, 9. And now he's after me, said 6. Well, technically, he's always after you, I said. There's 5, then 6, then 7. See? That proves it. I told 6 not to panic. Stay here. I'll get to the root of this. I hope so, said 6. I fear my days are numbered. All right, what are we noticing here? Of course, the title is doing the work alone. We know that in terms of wordplay, as a whole joke from all of our childhoods, why was 6 afraid of 7? Because 7, 8, 9. And as we go into this book, I believe it's the second page where I saw here where it says, where Private Eye says, I'm used to these types of numbers. They're always stuck in a problem. That actually points us to math and the use of math. Go back to the Easter egg. Kids, think about math. We never said it, but it's a clever nod to something that they're already familiar with. And then the next sentence. But I knew about the 7 fellow. He was odd. So thinking about odd and even numbers, Lazar plants these Easter eggs throughout this entire mystery here, and she even goes to break down the joke a little further. This is a great example of wordplay if you are going to use it to study. But also, I want you to go back to what we mentioned earlier. In order for a joke to land, in order for books to be funny, you have to stack your jokes. So this book not only uses wordplay, but every page turn, we get the element of surprise, and then there's some elevation because 6 is actually getting more agitated as we turn the page. We also see, even in the illustration, how the illustration goes from being suspenseful to being less calm and very anxious as we go throughout the book. So take stock of that whenever you are reading this, but this is a great read if you are going to consider books with wordplay. Another good book to consider is P is for Pterodactyl, which is also a great book for language lovers or if you're going to study the use of wordplay. In it, the author actually critiques the English language. You know how bow is spelled B-O-U-G-H and rough is spelled R-O-U-G-H, but they are pronounced very differently. This particular book actually is a critique of the English language and how we use words and how there are really a lot of rules and how English is so complicated to learn. So if you want to find a book that dives deeply into wordplay, P is for Pterodactyl is also a great title for you to consider. So the next tactic is one of my absolute favorites. It's true to life. So this is whenever we use common experiences, common complaints, and common gripes to make fun of in a particular story. Whenever you think something is true to life, those are the things that we all share universally. So think about universal experiences here. All the pumpkin things that happen during September to October. A lot of pumpkin, everything, where another thing that might be true to life, that family member that says I'm right up the street and it takes them a whole hour to get there and you're frustrated because it took them an hour and you actually leave them. Shame on you. Another one that's true to life in many people's cases, and also in Vanessa Brantley Newton's case, is getting the wrong family member to say grace. And Vanessa Brantley Newton does this with her book, Don't Let Auntie Mabel Bless the Table. Shall we read? Don't Let Auntie Mabel Bless the Table. Written and illustrated by Vanessa Brantley Newton. Sunday dinner is always a treat. We go to Auntie Mabel's. We're ready to eat. This idea of Sunday dinner, that's true to life. At least it used to be. Everyone is seated at the table. Everyone except dear Auntie Mabel. We got a matriarch. True to life. She is bringing mashed potatoes and a bowl of stewed tomatoes. So going back to wordplay. Wordplay is also rhythm and rhyme. So we got true to life. We got rhythm and rhyme happening on this page. Papa says, it's time to pray. Let's give thanks for this good day. Saying prayer and grace around the table. Also, true to life, you see the kids here sitting at one end of the table. But when I grew up, the kids had a different table. However, this is a long table, so the kids are all seated together on this end of the table here. And I'm going to stop there and let you all actually read the rest because you get a chance to see how everybody reacts when Auntie Mabel goes on way too long and say this prayer. But as you'll see in this book, Vanessa Brantley Newton does not truly rely on just one tactic, not just the true to life tactic. There are more tactics to creating humor. If you want another book that actually uses the true to life principle to bring humor to the forefront, one of those books is a very popular title that we all know. It's called The Day the Crayons Quit. There are several different key elements and human characteristics happening here on these pages. Drew Daywalt and Oliver Jeffers actually captures these elements really, really well and makes these crayons more human than they are crayons. If you haven't checked it out, you need to. It's a very popular book in the space, and you can glean a lot of lessons from its pages. True to life books have universal elements, which makes them lean more commercial than they lean literary. And we'll get a chance to talk about the difference between commercial success and literary successes in a future video. All right, next tactic. Here we go to the good old bait and switch, where we get set up by the character or the voice. We expect one thing and another thing happens. It's like we've been baited, we've been reeled in by either the tone, the setting, or a shift of perspective. And for this one, we're going to take it way, way back, just a few years. And the true story of the Three Little Pigs, the 25th year anniversary edition. Shall we? The true story of the Three Little Pigs, as told by John Cheska, illustrated by Lane Smith. Everybody knows the story of the Three Little Pigs, or at least they think they do. But I'll let you in on one little secret. Nobody knows the real story, because nobody has ever heard my side of the story. I'm the wolf, Alexander T. Wolf. You can call me Al. I don't know how this whole big bad wolf thing got started, but it's all wrong. Maybe it's because of our diet. Hey, it's not my fault wolves eat cute little animals like bunnies and sheep and pigs. That's just the way we are. If cheeseburgers were cute, folks would probably think you were big and bad too. But like I was saying, the whole big bad wolf thing is all wrong. The real story is about a sneeze and a cup of sugar. And we're going to stop there because we need to talk about how this wolf actually baited us and switched the subject, because we actually go and find out the true story, his side of the story. And at the end, we find that the wolf, if you look here, I'm not going to spoil the ending for you, but he is not in a favorable place at the end of the story. And let's talk about how he baited us. When we jump into the story, the Three Little Pigs, he actually discredits us because he says everybody knows the story of the Three Little Pigs, or at least they think they do. He's placing some doubt in your mind. He's already planting the seed so that you could actually doubt yourself and not consider the true story. Unreliable narrator, you watch out for him. Always do. And then he goes on to say that no one knows his side of the story. The wolf further goes on to talk about what he usually eats and compares his eating patterns to yours. He compares a cheeseburger-loving human to a sheep, bunny, and pig-loving wolf. Here we have a master manipulator. But let's talk about how John Cheska and Lane Smith is not just using the bait and switch, because we get some escalation here. We started off just talking about his side of the story, how nobody ever sees it. And then he goes on to this psychology bit right here to get us deeper into the weeds, discredit us some more. Then he drops the element of surprise where he tells us the real story is about a sneeze and a cup of sugar, pulling us along for the ride. Check this out if you hadn't already. It's a classic. You should read it. It's a good old bait and switch story. If you are looking for another bait and switch story, I have another one for you, Karina Felina, which is a folktale about this parrot who loves this cat and will do anything to please this cat. He even invited this cat over for a romantic dinner. Of course, the parrot is not so thrilled here because it didn't go down like the parrot wanted it to go. Thus, this feather here, and we actually see feathers coming out of the cat's mouth here. Very serious matter. The bait and switch happens because of the tone in the book. So if you look at the tone is quite different than the events that's going on in the book. The tone is more formal. The events, as we know, are more kid-like and silly and playful. So check it out when you can. It's a great study for the bait and switch concept. And you will also get to see in this particular book the element of surprise and also the escalation as we go from page to page. The great thing about the bait and switch tactic is it makes stories more memorable because it makes them hard to look away from. It intrigues you in a way that other elements of a great humor story does not, because you thought you were set up to have one experience and then the bottom falls out of that experience and you are intrigued until the very end. Usually, bait and switch, as you already see, it's effective in retellings because both of those stories I just showed you are retellings. Hey, if you made it this far, that means you're serious about your craft and you're trying to understand the world of children's literature and how to break into kid lit. So you really should check out my resources at kelewis.world. Those resources will help you understand the industry, deepen your craft, and give you tools and tricks you'll find useful on your journey. If you are a teacher looking at this video, there are additional resources for you. See how I transform my books into engaging curriculum where you unpack the book
and you get to explore literacy, math, science, and the arts. It's the perfect lesson plan for the day that you don't really feel like teaching, but also the ideal prep when preparing for a school visit. So run over to my site at kelewis.world and check out those resources. Now, back to the conversation.
Our fourth tool for today is juxtaposition. So imagine two things in a room that do not belong: clean, messy; big, small; mean, pleasant; wild, tempered. Think a case of the opposites. The thing about a case of the opposites and juxtaposition, if you do it right, you won't have to spend a serious amount of time on plot like other writers do. Why? Because when you use juxtaposition, especially with characters, the character actually drives the story. For instance, if you have two friends, one who is used to keeping things neat and tidy, and the other one who is used to keeping things messy, all you have to do is have a room and have those two people in it, and you have yourself a story. Because the person who likes to keep the room nice and neat will conflict with the person who wants to will always have conflict with the person who wants to be dirty. The person who is adventurous will always keep that person who is closed on the edge of their seats. And you, as the writer, have to negotiate that experience between these two characters. That's just one natural state of using juxtaposition. So if you like character driven stories and you tend not to be great at plotting, try using juxtaposition with two different characters and actually put them in a random scenario and make one thing happen and make that one thing lead to another thing. That might help you push your story forward. But in terms of juxtaposition and how it's used, I want you to consider the friends in this series. So you have something's wrong, nothing's wrong, and everything's wrong in the series. So look at these two here, the unlikely pair, a bear and a rabbit. And we see that this bear, a larger apex predator, is friends with a smaller creature who is not an apex predator. In this book, everything's wrong. We actually get to see how each of them drive the story. They make a very lovely pair. I would say Something's Wrong has got to be my favorite book in the series because we actually get to see our bunny stick up for our good friend here. And it was a pleasant surprise that I was looking forward to towards the end. Should I read? Let's try it. Let's see the first three spreads. Let's see what they give. Everything's Wrong. A Bear, a Hare, and Trouble Everywhere by Jory John and Eric Cran. Looks like another perfect morning. I can only assume that it'll be a no-hassle, stress-free, easy-peasy kind of day. That I can't see. Whoops, goodness, gosh. Wait a minute. Did the power just go out? I think it did. The power just went out. No, also, where is my breakfast? I can already say this with certainty. Today is shaping up to be weird. Really, really weird. I want to let you read this book. But the two of them actually meet in the woods and they make the best of the day. They go along on the journey and they make the best of the day. What I do want to point out, though, is in addition to juxtaposition, we had an opening of surprises. Going back to video number 1, there were some surprises that happened. First, the lights went out. We see that here. Secondly, our bear here spilled his breakfast, and then breakfast ended up on top of him. It's progressing. Use of surprise, but those actions get progressively worse as we continue to flip the page. And it'll continue to get worse as we flip the page here, and we get to see these two come together in the end. All right. The thing about juxtaposition, again, it is a humor machine if you got the right pairing because the stories practically write themselves. 2, the thing about having the perfect pair or the right pairing is that your series potential goes up way high. So for those of you who don't know what series potential is, that's the potential that your book has of becoming a series. Nothing Wrong series, which currently now has 3 books in the series. There's also Beacon Alley, which is a chapter book. There is Ivy and Bean, another chapter book, and there are some picture books here displayed on the screen that have also been serialized or have more than one story to the book because people like the pair and it works. All right, so this last tactic before we get into the final peak of the triangle where suspension of disbelief and defying logic lives. This last tactic has 4 parts. But fortunately enough, I can use one author illustrator to point to this one thing, irony. Irony is the difference between what is expected to happen and what actually happens. But there are 4 types of irony. However, again, thank goodness for Ryan T. Higgins. Makes my job really easy to explain irony based on his books here. Let's start off with the first type of irony, which is right here on the screen, situational irony. That is, of course, the difference between what is expected to happen and what actually happens. Take Ryan's book, Mother Bruce, for instance. You have a bear who really loves eggs, who goes out to get breakfast, but this bear actually becomes a mother of these goslings when he goes out to hunt his breakfast. Now, hilarious, I think, it's actually one of my favorite titles because of the situational humor, but also because, do we notice some wordplay here? Because if you look at the actual cover, there's a word marked out there. We know Mother Goose, she's very important in this space, but we are actually playing on the language here by saying Mother Bruce. Very clever of Ryan here, and it also makes it very funny. This bear does not want to be a mother to anybody, but definitely not geese. If this bear wanted to be a mother or a father to anything, it would probably be another bear, which makes it, of course, situational irony. The next example of irony is dramatic irony. So if you're looking at dramatic irony, you want to look at Ryan's book, We Don't Eat Our Classmates. And you want to pay very close attention to Penelope, because Penelope is afraid to death of the classroom's goldfish. Now, we know that goldfish are not harmful, but Penelope does not know that, because Penelope, the character, doesn't know it, but we as the reader know something that Penelope does not know. That makes it dramatic irony, when the character doesn't know something that the reader knows. You'll also see in that book Ryan's play on words. Ryan uses a lot of wordplay, a lot of puns. But if you go and you study We Don't Eat Our Classmates, you will see how Ryan is actually using dramatic irony. There's some escalation there. There's some wordplay and all the other tactics and tools that we talked about as we discuss humor. The third type of irony is verbal irony. And verbal irony is the difference between what is said and what's actually interpreted. Ryan's book, Be Quiet, actually shows this, where we have these 3 mice who are out in the woods. The older mouse is determined to actually have a quiet, wordless book, where the other 2 mice are very chatty and determines that that is not going to be the case, not on their watch. So in this book, there are certain phrases that the most mature mouse actually says, but the 2 who are very chatty interprets those sayings, which makes the book funny. What also makes Ryan's book very clever, it is a meta play on wordless picture books, because we went through this phase in publishing where there was a lot of wordless picture books, like a good bit of them. They still exist, but it seemed like wordless picture books were coming out almost every month or something like that. Some high number of wordless books that we were seeing in picture books. And Ryan decided that he was going to create a play on wordless picture books by creating Be Quiet, and one of the most exciting, I would say, parodies in the kid lit space. All right, and then the last type of irony we'll talk about here is anti-irony, or what they call post-irony, where what's being said is actually what's meant, and because so, it creates a larger laugh. So think about a very literal interpretation or on the nose interpretation of a specific line. And one of the books that I love to go back and read because it does this type of irony in such a great way is Norman Didn't Do It. Norman Didn't Do It. I'm actually going to read from this book, and I'm going to actually show you a couple of spreads where post-irony exists and it becomes very funny. All right. Norman Didn't Do It. Yes, he did. Written and illustrated by Ryan T. Higgins. Norman was a porcupine. Norman's best friend was Mildred. Mildred was a tree. The reason why that line works is typically in picture books, whenever we say that someone is a tree, we are usually saying that they are a giant, they are massive, they're towering over someone. But in this case, it's a tree. And it's found to be funny because of that. This particular book actually details a relationship between a beaver and a tree, where this particular beaver does something terrible and feels awful for it. And when we get to the climax of the story, when Norman is feeling most down, we get this page here, which is one of my favorite spreads. It says, Norman had hit rock bottom. Something had to be done. In the crux of this story, at the very climax, when Norman is at despair and hit rock bottom, he is literally on rocks, which is an example of post irony that Ryan does really, really, really well. Just as in Ryan's other books, there is wordplay in this book, there's escalation, there's surprise moments. There are many different elements that Ryan uses in this book here. If you pick it up and you study it, you'll find that he's not just leaning on irony to tell his story. The narrative elements, the storytelling elements, all the parts and pieces that we have discussed over the course of these 2 videos are here. All right, let's go to the way, way top of this pyramid where we have the suspension of disbelief and defying logic. Let's talk about defying logic for a little bit. Do you remember science? Whenever you're doing an experiment, you only change one variable, which is your independent variable, and all other variables stay the same. The same with storytelling. Whenever you are going to defy logic, only consider changing one element. You make one rule and you stick to that rule throughout the entire book. All the other elements of your world should remain constant. Let's take, for example, your book. It rains on Tuesdays, but anything could come out of the sky. Of course, we know that it rains on Tuesdays, but if it rains on Tuesdays and anything can come out of the sky, we can have shoes come out of the sky. There could be elephants come out of the sky. There could be aliens come out of the sky. But we know to expect that in this world. The other variables, though, need to be quite constant in order for your reader to follow along with you. Because if you change too much, the reader becomes unsettled. And there's too much to pay attention to, and your job is to actually rope them along. You have the chance to do a whole bunch of world building in novels, but you're in picture books. So that level of world building does not apply to picture books. You need to stick to one thing. Less is more. So whenever you want to suspend disbelief, whenever you want to defy logic, don't be afraid to take that leap. But remember, you only change one variable and leave everything else the same. The variable that you change, that is your vehicle to sneak in the funny, wherever that comes for you. All right, so let's do a quick overview and I can show you where these things exist in Never Take Your Rhino on a Plane. So let's go to our first tool that we use today. It's called wordplay. Of course, in wordplay, this particular book rhymes and the rhyme bounces. The thing about this rhyme is that it rhymes in the middle of the line and it rhymes at the end of the line, making it bounce as a turbulent adventure would. Our second tactic for today was true to life. Never Take Your Rhino on a Plane is true to life because it was about an awful plane experience. We often go in airports and we see people behaving in ways that they shouldn't. We see those who are talking out loud on their phones and not putting their earbuds in. We see those who stand up when the flight lands and there is nowhere to go. We have people who are unruly to our flight attendants. This book is true to life in that way. It is literally a what not to do as you go in these people's airports. The third thing, bait and switch. The thing about the language in this book, you can take him on a ship, hail a taxi for the trip, waltz him gladly to the car or to the train, but absolutely never believe it's safe or clever to take your pet rhinoceros on a plane. That voice is a formal voice for a wildly ridiculous story. What I have learned or picked up over the years, the more ridiculous the story, the more formal the voice, and that juxtaposition between voice and subject matter also plays into the humor. Juxtaposition, large animal here, small human. Also, there are several types of irony in this book, but my favorite spread happens to be the spread with the carousel, because when the two go to actual baggage claim and they go pick up the luggage, Rhino uses the luggage carousel in a way that a kid will use a carousel at the fair. And that spread usually gets my biggest laughs whenever I am reading Rhino, because that line is giving a situational irony, because what we expect to happen and what actually happens are two different things. Also using wordplay because of the word carousel, we actually play on what kids know carousels to be and what adults know carousels to be, because when a kid thinks of a carousel, they're actually thinking of carnivals and fairs. And so our Rhino actually uses the carousel in a way the kid will use it if they were to go to a fair. This book defies logic and going back to the pattern of three. And then the suspension of disbelief, because we actually go along for the entire ride. Hey, if you like this video, that means you also like the way I break down concept picture books and how to get rid of the fluff. Check out that video next. If you like to apply any of the tools that we use in today's video, go to my website at kelewis.world. There is a humor score sheet there where you can actually track the types of humor you're using in your picture books. It gives you a practical score and actionable next steps to beef up the humor in your manuscript. See you next video.